The steam from the espresso machine hissed, a sharp, metallic scream that mirrored the tightening in Chloe Bennett's chest. The gilded bean was half empty, the late afternoon sun casting long, skeletal shadows across the hardwood floor. Chloe wiped the counter with rhythmic, obsessive precision. Her lover, Julian, was late. He was always late lately, citing urgent consultations at the firm. She wanted to believe him. She needed to, but trust is a fragile porcelain cup, and hers had a hairline fracture that was rapidly widening. Two men sat in the corner booth, their voices low, draped in the heavy velvet of conspiracy. One was Marcus, Julian's closest colleague. Chloe ducked behind the pastry case, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She shouldn't listen, but the mention of Julian's name acted like a magnet, pulling her closer to the edge of an abyss she wasn't sure she could survive. "He's going through with it, then?" Marcus asked, his voice laced with a grim sort of admiration. "Tonight, at the gala, there's no turning back once the papers are signed." The other man, a stranger with a sharp, predatory face, nodded. "It's the ultimate betrayal. After everything they've built together. He's liquidating the assets, cutting the ties. She won't see it coming until the rug is pulled out from under her." Chloe felt the world tilt. The she was undeniable. It was her. They had talked about a future, about a house in the hills, about escaping the grind. But Julian was a man of shadows, a man who dealt in the high-stakes world of corporate law, while she served caffeine to the elite. She was his secret, his sanctuary, or so she thought. Now, it seemed she was merely a liability being managed, an asset to be stripped. The gala was the firm's annual masquerade. He hadn't invited her. She retreated to the back room, the smell of roasted beans suddenly nauseating. Her mind raced, stitching together fragments of the past month. The whispered phone calls, the way he turned his screen away when she entered the room, the coldness in his eyes that he tried to mask with expensive gifts. It wasn't love, it was a payoff. A severance package for a heart he no longer required. She looked at her reflection in the stainless steel fridge. Her eyes were hollow, rimmed with the red of exhaustion and burgeoning rage. She wouldn't be the victim. She wouldn't wait for the rug to be pulled. If Julian was going to play a game of masks, she would show up uninvited. She would tear the mask off himself. She grabbed her coat, leaving the open sign swinging precariously on the door. The city outside was cold, the air biting at her skin, but she felt nothing but the white-hot heat of a woman scorned. The Metropolitan Gala was a sea of silk and deception. Chloe moved through the crowd like a ghost, her face hidden behind a simple lace mask she'd bought from a street vendor. The music was a discordant swell of violins, heightening the surreal nature of the evening. She saw Julian almost immediately. He stood at the center of a circle of power, looking regal in a midnight blue tuxedo. He was laughing, a sound that grated against her ears like sandpaper. Beside him stood a woman Chloe didn't recognize, elegant, older, radiating an aura of cold authority. Marcus was there too, hovering like a vulture. Chloe edged closer, hiding behind a marble pillar. "It's done," Julian said, his voice carrying over the music. "The transfer is complete. By tomorrow, the old life is dead. We move forward with the new regime." The older woman placed a hand on his arm. "You've done well, Julian. Sacrifice is the price of true legacy." Chloe's breath hitched. Sacrifice. That was her. She was the sacrifice on the altar of his ambition. She felt a surge of adrenaline, a desperate need to scream, to shatter the crystal glasses and expose the rot beneath the finery. She stepped out from behind the pillar, her movements stiff. Julian's eyes met hers across the room. For a fraction of a second, his composure flickered. Fear? Guilt? It didn't matter. He broke away from the group, weaving through the masked guests toward her. "Chloe? What are you doing here?" His voice was a frantic whisper, devoid of the warmth she once cherished. "I heard them, Julian," she spat, the words tasting like copper. "I heard Marcus. I know about the liquidation. I know you're cutting me out." Julian took her arm, his grip firm, pulling her toward a darkened balcony. "You don't understand what you're saying. This isn't the place, because the sacrifice isn't supposed to speak." Out on the balcony, the city lights twinkled like indifferent diamonds. "I loved you," Chloe said, her voice trembling. "I gave you everything, and you're selling it all off to climb a ladder that doesn't even have a top." Julian looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the exhaustion in his face. It wasn't the exhaustion of a liar, but of a man who had been holding up a falling sky. I am liquidating everything, Chloe, he said slowly, as if speaking to a child. I'm selling my partnership. I'm breaking the contracts. I'm walking away from the firm. Chloe blinked, the rage momentarily stalled. What? The woman you saw. She's the lead investigator for the state's attorney. My firm, Marcus. They've been laundering money for years. I found out, and they trapped me. They told me if I went to the police, they'd implicate you. They'd make it look like the café was part of the shell. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. They threatened me? Chloe whispered. Julian nodded, his eyes wet. I had to play the part. I had to make them think I was on their side while I gathered the evidence to burn it all down. The betrayal Marcus was talking about? It wasn't me betraying you. It was me betraying them. I had to give them everything, my career, my reputation, our savings, to buy enough time to get the files to the authorities without them hurting you. Chloe looked back through the glass doors at Marcus, who was watching them with a thin, suspicious smile. The rug being pulled out wasn't her life, it was the foundation of the criminal empire Marcus had built. Julian wasn't leaving her for a new life, he was destroying his old life to save hers. The weight of her misunderstanding felt like a physical blow. She had seen treachery where there was only a desperate, sacrificial love. But you didn't tell me, she cried softly. You let me believe. I couldn't risk it, Julian said, stepping closer. If you had known, you wouldn't have been able to look Marcus in the eye when he came into the shop. You're too honest, Chloe. Your heart is written on your face. I had to let you hate me to keep you safe. He reached out, his hand hovering near her cheek, afraid to touch her. In that moment, the definition of betrayal shifted. She realized she had betrayed him in her mind. She had been so quick to believe the worst, so eager to find the villain in the man she loved, that she had nearly ruined the very plan designed to protect her. The real betrayal wasn't Julian's secrecy, it was her lack of faith. She looked at the man before her, stripped of his status, facing a future of uncertainty and legal battles, and saw him clearly for the first time. What happens now? She asked, her voice a mere thread. Julian looked out at the horizon. Now, we wait for the sirens. Marcus will be arrested tonight. I'll likely lose my license for a while. We'll have nothing, Chloe. No house in the hills. Just each other and the truth. Chloe reached out and took his hand, her fingers interlacing with his. The lace mask felt heavy on her face, a relic of a masquerade that was finally ending. Nothing is a good place to start, she whispered. As the first faint sound of a siren wailed in the distance, cutting through the orchestral music of the gala, Chloe didn't feel the fear she expected. She felt a strange, terrifying freedom. The betrayal was a ghost, dissolved by the harsh light of a different reality. They stood on the balcony, two people losing everything to save what actually mattered, watching as the world they knew began to crumble in a beautiful, chaotic heap. The sirens grew louder, a mechanical chorus heraldic of the coming storm. Inside the ballroom, the music stumbled and died. Confusion rippled through the masked elite like a stone thrown into a still pond. Marcus's face transformed from smug satisfaction to a mask of sheer terror as blue and red lights began to pulse against the high windows. He looked toward the balcony, his eyes finding Julian's. There was no more pretense. Julian didn't flinch. He held Chloe's hand tighter, a silent anchor in the rising tide. It's starting, he murmured. Chloe watched as plainclothes officers moved through the crowd with surgical precision. The stranger with the predatory face tried to slip through a side exit, but he was intercepted. The Gilded Bean and its quiet mornings felt like a lifetime ago. She realized then that Julian had been living in a war zone for months, fighting a battle she hadn't even known existed, all while she grumbled about his late nights. Marcus was led away in handcuffs, his expensive suit suddenly looking small and ridiculous. He shouted something, a curse, a threat, but it was swallowed by the commotion. The investigator, the woman Julian had been talking to, walked onto the balcony. She looked at Chloe, then at Julian. It's over, Mr. Vance. We have the servers. Thank you for your cooperation. She paused, her gaze softening slightly. You should leave now. My team will contact you for the formal deposition tomorrow. Julian nodded, his shoulders finally dropping from their defensive posture. He looked at Chloe, the masquerade mask hanging lopsided on his face. Let's go home, he said. But as they walked through the now empty ballroom, Chloe realized they had no home to go to, not the one they'd imagined. The apartment was tied to the firm, the accounts were frozen. They walked out into the cold night air, the street a chaotic theater of flashing lights and shouting voices. They walked for blocks in silence, the finery of their evening clothes a stark contrast to the gritty reality of the pavement. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a profound, hollow ache. "I'm sorry," Chloe said eventually, the words feeling inadequate. "I'm sorry I didn't trust you." Julian stopped under a flickering street lamp. "Don't be. I gave you every reason to doubt. I played the villain so well I almost became him." He looked at his hands, the hands that had signed away a fortune to buy a chance at a clean conscience. "I thought I was being a hero, but I was just a coward who was afraid to lose you if you knew how deep the mud went." They reached a small park, the grass frosted with the coming winter. They sat on a bench, two refugees from a life of glitter and lies. The betrayal she had feared, the affair, the abandonment, was a fantasy. The reality was much more complex. A man who loved her enough to let her hate him. "You know," Chloe said, looking at the stars, "I think the worst part wasn't thinking you were cheating. It was thinking I didn't know you at all." Julian leaned his head back against the wood of the bench. "Maybe you didn't. Maybe I didn't either. We were living in the Gilded Bean, Chloe. Everything was roasted to perfection and served with a smile. We never had to deal with the bitter grounds." He turned to her, his eyes reflecting the dim city light. "Now we do. It's going to be hard. People will say I was part of it. They'll say I only turned because I got caught. Your life at the cafe. People will gossip. It won't be quiet anymore." Chloe squeezed his hand. She thought of the steam, the hissing espresso machine, the mundane safety of her old life. It was gone, replaced by this cold, sharp honesty. "Let them gossip," she said. "I'd rather be in the cold with the truth than in the warmth with a lie." They stayed there until the sun began to bleed over the horizon, painting the skyscrapers in shades of bruised purple and orange. The city was waking up, oblivious to the fact that one of its empires had fallen overnight. Julian stood up, offering his hand to Chloe. His tuxedo was wrinkled, his hair a mess, but he looked more present to her than he had in years. "I have a friend with a cabin upstate," he said. "It's small, and the roof leaks, but it's outside the jurisdiction of anyone who knows my name." Chloe stood up, brushing the frost from her dress. She thought about the ultimate betrayal she had overheard. Marcus had been right, in a way. Julian had betrayed the life they were supposed to have. He had murdered their comfort to save their souls. As they walked toward the subway, leaving the gala and the masks behind, Chloe realized that trust isn't the absence of secrets. It's the belief that, when the secrets are told, the person holding them was holding them for you. The train was nearly empty, filled only with the early morning workers, the cleaners, the bakers, the people who kept the world spinning while the powerful slept. Chloe sat next to Julian, her head on his shoulder. The rhythmic clatter of the tracks was a lullaby for the exhausted. She closed her eyes and saw the cafe again, the way the light hit the pastry case. She realized she wouldn't miss it. She wouldn't miss the person she was there, the woman who waited for a man to come home and tell her she was enough. She was enough on her own, and Julian was enough without the midnight blue tuxedo. The betrayal had been a mirror, reflecting her own insecurities back at her. By believing he was capable of such cruelty, she had discovered her own capacity for doubt. But in the wreckage of the morning, that doubt had burned away. There was only the track ahead, the leaking cabin, and the slow, difficult process of building something that wasn't gilded, but solid. As the train emerged from the tunnel into the blinding light of the new day, Julian whispered, "We're going to be okay." Chloe didn't answer right away. She watched the graffiti on the walls flash by, a riot of color against the gray concrete. She thought about the word, betrayal, one last time. It was such a heavy word, usually reserved for the breaking of hearts. But sometimes, you have to betray the person someone thinks you are to become the person they need you to be. Julian had betrayed the Julian Chloe loved to save the Chloe he loved. It was a crooked, painful sort of devotion. She pulled his arm around her, feeling the steady beat of his heart through the fabric of his coat. "I know," she finally said. The doors hissed open at their stop, a sound no longer like a scream, but like a breath. They stepped out onto the platform, leaving the shadows of the masquerade behind, walking together into the unfiltered light of a world that was finally, brutally, honest. The air was crisp, smelling of ozone and the waking city. No more masks, no more whispers in booths. Just the long walk ahead.